Hello everyone, hope you are safe and healthy. This presentation is about GST implication on directors' remuneration. Recently, there have been advanced rulings which has created a lot of confusion on this issue. So, we thought to share our views on this subject. Hope you find the presentation useful and informative.
Well, the director's remuneration finds place via notification number 13, which comes out of section 9, subsection 3. This notification speaks that services supplied by a director of a company to the said company falls under reverse charge mechanism and GST is payable by the company at the rate of 18% on the remuneration paid to the director for services received from the director. So this is the basic charging provisions contained in the GST Act on directors' remuneration. So first we need to determine whether the services by the director to the company falls under supply or not to be leviable to GST. Now supply is defined in section 7, wherein one of the subsections speaks that activities or transactions specified in schedule 3 shall be treated neither as a supply of goods nor as a supply of services. This is an exclusion clause. So whatever is mentioned in schedule 3 are those on which GST is not leviable. And one of the entries in schedule 3 is services by an employee to the employer in the course of or in relation to his employment. So any services by an employee to the employer, that is the salary payments which we make, are outside the purview of GST. So we need to determine whether director to whom remuneration is paid is an employee or not. When we speak about directorship, we have to go to the Companies Act. Under Companies Act, there are several kind of nature of appointment or categories and subcategories of directors. First, we look to the nature of appointment, which is prescribed in the Act. A director can be a managing director, or a whole-time director, or a director, additional director, alternate director, or nominee director. We all know that director, shareholder, companies, all these are separate entities. So a nominee director is normally a director who is appointed in pursuance of any agreement or for representing shareholding by government or institution. So he is generally not an employee. Alternate director is a director in place of a director who is out of India for not less than 3 months. So he is an alternate director. Then we come to additional director. Additional director is a director who is appointed in a board meeting or any meeting apart from general meeting of members. So a director, if appointed during the year, is an additional director till the AGM, and in AGM he may be regularized as a normal director, whole-time director, managing director, whatever the case may be. So this is a very common term because whenever we are appointing a person as a director in a company during the year, he is appointed as an additional director. Now we move on to director, which we all know that in many cases the appointment is mentioned as director, and if you go to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs website, you can see that the appointment is reflected as a director. Whole-time director. Now this is very important. Whole-time director has been defined in the Companies Act. It includes a director in the whole-time employment of the company. Now this is the first place where we see that the word employment is coming in. Now, although the Act prescribes that a whole-time director or a CEO or a MD is a key managerial personnel, and it is mandatory for a listed or public companies with paid up capital above 10 crores or 10 crores to appoint a key managerial personnel like MD or whole-time director or CFO. But a private company can voluntarily appoint a managing director or a whole-time director also. A managing director can be a managing director in two companies, but a whole-time director can be a whole-time director only in one company. But having said this, a whole-time director or a managing director can be normal directors, not whole-time in other companies also. So a whole-time director has to be a whole-time director in one company, but he or she can be normal directors in other companies subject to permission from the board. Now we come to the next leg, which is the categories. When you are appointing a director, you have to prescribe, you have to mention that, specify that what is the category. So a director can be a promoter director, professional director, independent director, or small shareholders director. Small shareholders director is normally applicable for listed companies where you need to have a representational director for protecting the interest of small shareholders. We are not discussing much on that. Independent director. Independent director, as the word suggests, is a director who is a non-related director, who is not related to the shareholders, to the promoters, to the executive directors, and like that. So an independent director does not get remuneration, he just gets sitting fees for attending meetings. So an independent director is also not an employee. Professional director is a director who is other than the promoter or independent director. So who is promoter now? Promoter is a person who is identified as such by the company, whether it's a listed company in its prospectus or in an annual return for any other unlisted company also, who normally has the control over the affairs, who is having the shareholding and all. So normally the owners are the promoter directors. So professional director is one who is not an independent director, who is not a promoter director, but he is a professional director. Means normally a professional director is an executive director who is appointed in his professional capacity to take care, but he is not a promoter. He does not hold shares and like that. Now we move to another subcategory, whether that director is a chairman, executive director, or non-executive director. A chairman is a person who is designated as such to be the chairman for the company. An executive director is defined in the Companies Act. So whether we just appoint a person specifying that he is an executive director in the form, but the Companies Act specifies that who is an executive director. Executive director means a whole-time director. Very simply, in the Companies Act and relevant rules, they have prescribed that executive director means a whole-time director. So that means we again come to the definition of whole-time director. Whole-time director is a director in the whole-time employment of the company. So executive directors are the ones who basically are involved in the day-to-day execution of affairs of the company. These include whole-time directors also, managing directors also. Whereas non-executive directors are generally those who are professionally involved merely in broad business of the company, do not involve themselves in day-to-day activities. They just attend board meetings and receive sitting fees for providing services of non-executive director, like independent directors or nominee directors. These are non-executive directors normally. So these are not employees of the company, and executive directors are normally employees of the company. Even there is a distinction that executive or non-executive, that nowhere the word employee is defined under Companies Act, but from the reading of all the provisions we can conclude that an executive director who is in the whole time employment of the company can be termed as an employee definitely. So an executive director can be an employee of the company, but a non-executive director cannot be. Now we move to other acts, because we have to determine that whether the director to whom the remuneration is being paid is an employee for the company or not, because this is the basic point to determine whether GST is leviable on the such director remuneration or not. When we move to Income Tax Act, the Income Tax Act also does not define employee, but there are certain sections from which we can draw some inference, like section 15 says that salary from employer will be charged to tax under this head, income from salaries. Then we move to TDS sections. Under section 192, it is specified then that the TDS on salaries, if applicable, will be deducted under section 192. Interestingly, here also it says that where during the financial year an SSE is employed simultaneously under more than one employer, then he may furnish the details of salary from one of the companies to the other employer, then the other employer can deduct TDS considering the salary income from the first company also. So that means the income tax also perceives that a person may be an employee in more than one company. So here we can see that there is a concept of part-time employment also, but for the purpose of income tax, the income from both the employers will be considered as income from salaries. In fact, the company which is deducting TDS on the employee's salary is required to issue a certificate of such deduction in Form 16. So, the salaried employees are getting Form 16 issued by the company, which is issued only to the employees. Non-executive directors are not entitled to remuneration, so their sitting fees does not fall under income from salaries, and TDS is not deducted under 192, whereas TDS is deducted under section 194J, professional services, at the rate of 10% currently. So we need to check that whether the TDS is being deducted under section 192 or under section 194J. This is very important. Now we move to the Employees PF Act. Here the word employee has been defined. Employee means any person who is employed for wages in any kind of work, manual or otherwise, in connection with the work of an establishment, who gets his wages directly or indirectly from the employer. So, employee has been defined under Employees PF and Miscellaneous Provisions Act. Who gets wages means salaries also, directly or indirectly from his employer. Now, recently there have been certain rulings under GST regime. When we look into that, there have been two rulings, one of Alcon Consulting Engineers India Private Limited, wherein it was held by the ruling authorities that services provided by directors are not covered under Schedule 3 and there is no exclusion. The director is not an employee of the company and the remuneration paid to the director is liable to be taxed under reverse charge mechanism. But the question raised in this case was not whether the service is taxable or not, but whether this supply is liable to tax under reverse charge mechanism. This was issued by the Advanced Ruling Authority Karnataka sometime in September 2019. A very recent judgment, due to which the entire hue and cry has been there on this aspect, was of Claycraft India Private Limited, which was issued by the Advanced Ruling Authority of Rajasthan in February only, where the company was paying salary as well as commission to directors. GST under reverse charge was being paid by the company on the commission payments. However, no GST was paid on the fixed salary. The ruling authority held that services rendered by the director to the company is paid to them in any head, but it is liable to GST under reverse charge. And it was held that GST is applicable even if director is a part-time director in the other company. So these were the rulings which were against the taxpayers. Very recently, there has been a ruling in this month, it was published in this month itself, Anil Kumar Agarwal, issued by the very same Advanced Ruling Authority of Karnataka which issued the adverse ruling in September. In this, the ruling was sought for ascertaining whether various types of income are includable in aggregate turnover for computing GST registration thresholds. The ruling authority held that if the applicant is the employee of the said company, that is, he is an executive director, the services of the applicant as an employee are neither treated as supply of goods nor as supply of services in terms of Schedule 3, and hence only the income receipts towards salary or remuneration as a non-executive director are liable for tax. So that means the ruling authority held that the remuneration paid to an executive director can be termed as a salary paid to employee and hence not liable to GST. So the facts of each case are different and depends on presentation and facts also. So in our view, the rulings have been given without considering all facts, maybe due to the reason that full facts of the case were either not presented properly or maybe any other reason. In fact, the Honorable Supreme Court has held in judgments under other statutes in the past, not under GST, such as the case of Ram Prasad and etc., where it was held that directors can also be employees. In fact, if we move to the service tax regime also, there was a definition of service and there was an exclusion clause just like schedule 3 that a provision of service by an employee to the employer in the course or of in relation to his employer is not liable to service tax. And during that time the Ministry of Corporate Affairs via a circular clarified that non whole time directors are not covered under exempted list and as such the sitting fees या commission payable to them by the company is liable to service tax. So mark the words non whole time directors. Non whole time directors are not under exempted list, so sitting fees are liable to service tax. So here also they were silent about the whole time directors here in this case. In fact, there have been several judgments of service tax tribunals in favor of companies wherein it was decided that service tax not applicable on directors remuneration, but in fact Kolkata tribunal there are two differing judgments, one in favor and one against. So a lot depends on the facts of the case also. What are the basic pointers to determine whether a director is an employee or not, whether GST is applicable under reverse charge mechanism? Please take a note of these pointers, these are very important. Whether the director is a whole-time director, managing director, additional, independent, or executive or non-executive, which is very important. Executive directors are held to be employees, non-executive are not. Whether appointed in more than one company, whether check the nature of appointment as per the MCA records. What is it there in your MCA records? What has been filed in the past? There may have been that you have filed as non-executive but you are paying remuneration, so need to check all these things. Second leg, whether remuneration received from more than one company. This is very important because if the remuneration is received from more than one company, then he is not a whole-time director, so it could be an issue. Whether the remuneration is fixed, variable, or both. Whether remuneration is changing every year. Whether the remuneration last time was 100, today it is 120, again it will be 80. Whether there is something like that. Whether what is the payment mode, whether it is monthly, quarterly, or once in a year, or whether it is lump sum, maybe some amount today, some amount after 6 months. All these are factors which will determine whether the director falls under the category of employee or not. Whether TDS is deducted under section 192 and form 16 issued, whether PF deducted if applicable, whether P tax deposited. We have to check the terms of appointment letter, the copy of board resolution for remuneration for appointment. Although the advance rulings are binding only on the concerned applicants, but many a times department considered it as a guiding factor. So we need to be prepared and documented well to determine this thing that yes, the director is an employee, to come out of the ambit of the RCM thing.
We hope this presentation was helpful to you. And in case of any further queries, feel free to connect to us because GST is still a nascent subject, and as the time progresses, we all will learn and get to know more about this. So, with these words, thank you very much for your patient hearing.